welcome everyone to our next session here at Connections Summit, Smart Energy, Consumer Demand, and ROI. I'm Daniel Holcomb, the Senior Analyst of Smart Home Research at Parks Associates, and I'll be moderating this session. And I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors for this 20th year. We definitely could not pull this off without you. Today we're going to be talking about essentially the demand for smart energy solutions in the connected home. And essentially, what drives that demand, what is really pushing people to adopt these technologies, as well as how you connect them, how the technology works, the technology layers, how you get people to give up control as well. And then, of course, how you scale the business side and how you get to the next consumer. I have a great panel of experts today with me talking about this subject from Pacific Gas and Electric, GreenMarbles, Ayla Networks, and Leap Energy. Before we get into it, though, I'd like to share some of our data from Parks Associates. We do a quarterly survey of 8,000 households throughout the year, quarterly. And consumers tell us that for those that have smart home devices, they tell us that that 40% essentially use their set up routines for their devices. And the number 2 reason for that is saving energy. Now, of course, to make that happen, you have to also be willing to share data between devices. And 60% of smart home device owners that they are willing to share energy. And to talk more about how you get to that other 40% that isn't so far willing to, we have a panel to really discuss more about this. Starting with Albert. Albert, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks. Albert Chiu with Pacific Gas and Electric Company. How many of you heard of PG&E? Okay, well, at least half. Just curious, any utility person besides me over here? Wow, okay. Well, not that many. I am honored to be here. I am Albert Chiu with PG&E, and I am a product manager and have been with the company for 26 years. I worked on energy efficiency, renewable energies, clean technologies, demand response, electric vehicles, VGIs, policies and program designs, and I serve on the board of the Open ADR Alliance. Happy to be here to learn from all of you.
Great. And Ann, please introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. Ann Ferguson. I'm with GreenMarbles. We are a technology integration company. I've been in the smart tech space for, more years than I'd like to admit at this point, but very much enjoyed it and primarily focus on multifamily and residential housing technology integration today to include smart energy devices, and excited to talk about some of the changes that we're seeing there.
Great. All right, and Ajit, you're up next.
Thanks. So I'm head of product at Ayla Networks. It's a Bay Area-based company. We help our customers build and manage smart home consumer devices, and we help them do that all through devices, like connecting the devices as well as cloud, and help them build mobile apps. I'm excited to be here. I want to learn and see, experience this. Thanks.
Great. And lastly, Vera, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Vera Yuan. I work at Leap Energy as the Partnerships and Business Development Lead for our Smart Buildings and Devices vertical. I've been working in partnerships for about 10 years. The last 5 years have been focused on smart home. I helped establish the business unit for some simple things prior to this, and have been at Leap Energy for about 2 years. Leap is a virtual power plant platform. We're a VPP platform that enables our partners, who are typically software integrators, software platforms, smart home platforms, or OEMs, basically build new revenue streams through participation in the energy markets, the utilities, and demand response. So excited to be here with you all as well.
Great. Well, now we're going to jump right into it. To set the scene, Ajit, talk a little bit about how EVs, electrification of appliances, and data center growth are challenging different companies like utilities, for example, and how do connected products and systems fit into energy strategy?
Sure. So what we are currently seeing is there is a transition of traditionally vehicles and equipments that used to run on gas to move to electricity, right? So there is a huge demand on the utility companies which has newly come in. And then we have, thanks to AI and cloud, we have data centers that require 24/7 stable and reliable energy, right? So what that essentially does is there is immense pressure on the utility companies to provide, to supply, right, at all the hours. Smart devices and smart systems, in my opinion, they do two things, right? So what they do is, A, they allow the utility companies to optimize the peak demand, and they do that by controlling the smart devices. And B, because of all the data now they have access to, thanks to these connected devices and systems, they can better predict and react and act rather, right? For all the demand that comes to them throughout the day, right? So it's interesting that smart devices and systems over the period of time in the coming days, right, will play a major role in optimizing all of this.
Yeah, and you mentioned data centers. That's a really big draw. I'm from Texas, where some recent articles have come out about how data centers pose a really big challenge for the energy grid in Texas in the next few years, unless there's something done about that. And of course, part of the idea is to shift energy management in the shift energy usage in residential as well as commercial. But multifamily also poses a real opportunity for that. And I don't know if you could talk more about that, Ann, about kind of some of the opportunities there.
Sure, absolutely. As we see consumers generally not being able to get into their first home, not being able to transition from a home they're into a new one, that's only further fueling growth in the multifamily space. And multifamily developments, really regardless of size, are obviously big drawers of power, big users of power and energy. And so they've got a bottom line issue that they've got to deal with. For most multifamily properties, energy is one of the top 3 drivers of expense, right? So if you're focused on NOI and trying to improve that, you've really got to focus on ways to minimize or at least optimize your energy utilization. And what's exciting now is we are coming to a point in 2026 where energy savings is going from just being this sort of this philosophical ideal to something that is actually a driver of financial benefit and a really strong financial lever for multifamily developers across their portfolios. So what we're seeing is with the integration of additional AI-based tools, we're moving from just being responsive with energy utilization to truly being predictive. So when you've got occupancy information that you can layer on with weather information that you can layer on with video surveillance to indicate where people are around the properties for various periods of time, you can start to be much smarter about the energy consumption. And then when you start to layer in things like potentially solar or time of use, you're getting to a place where consumers, whether residential or multifamily, they're not just being smarter about how they're consuming energy, they're actually consuming cheaper energy as well, which is exciting.
Yeah. Albert, she mentioned, of course, time of use. And when you think about the utility perspective, there's lots of offerings, time of use plans. There's energy plans where you can get some of your renewables in there. And at least from your perspective, what causes consumers to care about energy management? Is it things like renewables? Is it the cost of energy? Is it do you see people going for time of use a lot more? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the cost of energy must be the number one. Many states and areas, their electric rates are increasing due to different reasons, extreme climates, customer EV adoptions, electrifications, right, and policies. For example, San Francisco Bay Area, in few years, we can no longer buy a natural gas water heater, right? These are policies driven electrifications. And all of these combined, create a very interesting dynamics that we have never seen before. That our customers have, our customers are interested in energy and when they use their energies. In the past, there's Energy Stars. People purchase energy efficiency measures, but right now, not that it's not using less is good, using electricity more efficiently is good, but then exactly what time you use it and and how much you use it, it's critical. So
Yeah.
therefore, all of these drivers, in my opinions, are the reasons why people are more interested in how they use the energies, compared to before.
Yeah, and of course, one way that you can use energy and manage energy is through reduction at peak time, which is oftentimes referred to as demand response or peak time reduction plans. Oftentimes, the term virtual power plant is used interchangeably with that, but can also mean other things. And some of that involves really seeding control devices. So Vera, I wanted to ask you about how you can convince consumers to cede control of their devices to these types of programs.
That's a great question. So essentially, we're seeing a lot of different devices come online. Traditionally, demand response has been something that people equate with smart thermostats, they equate with discomfort. But as we see electrification take hold within the household, we're seeing a lot of other appliances be useful. You're seeing water heaters come online. You're seeing EV chargers. You're seeing many different appliances like stoves, induction stoves with a battery attached, or just generally a home battery. And all of these different appliances work differently with the consumer. And so the interesting thing is that here at Leap, we've worked with all of these different types of appliances, and we've seen our partners take different stances on how to incentivize those end users. So for smart thermostats, we're seeing a lot of folks put up an upfront incentive, and that works really well. It could be anything from a raffle to, our partner Samsung does points to their Play Store. We have folks who do a straight up gift card. So there's a lot of different ways to motivate. We have a lot of our battery and EV partners take a different approach with auto enrollment. The thing about incentives is you can try and incentivize users as much as you want with as much money, but it requires them to do the effort and make the effort to really go out and enroll. And so the enrollment for those programs, you're looking at 1 to 2%, and if you're doing it well, 5%. But as you move on to different devices like battery and EV charging, where it's not materially affecting the homeowner or the user's comfort as much, there is an ability to do things like auto enrollment. We have many battery partners that are now exploring auto enrollment, and they're looking at 80 to 90% adoption and enrollment rates, and they're using little to no incentive. So it really depends on your product, how well you know your customer, and what you think will get them to sign up and also stay on the program. That's really important, right? The way that we have a battery participate versus a smart thermostat participate is very different. Where a battery can be participating regularly and often, we've learned through many years of demand response with the smart thermostats that smart thermostats are really comfort sensitive. So it's really about participating in emergency events and on an as-needed basis. So all of that really drives toward what the incentive you should offer should be, and also how you want to approach the end customer.
Yeah, very interesting. And of course, obviously getting in these, the first step is making sure that you get the tech into the home and connected. And so starting with the sort of the buyer journey for that, Anne, I wanted to ask you, which channels are really driving adoption of connected energy technologies?
So I think about it a little bit differently than the channels. It's really what are the drivers, right, at a broader level. And I think for consumers, it's all about the economy, right? It's about where they're being hurt today in their wallets. Energy prices are rising pretty significantly depending on where you are. I'm based in Virginia, and we've historically had incredibly cheap energy, but I just got my latest utility bill, and I was like, $129, what? Which I know for a lot of folks, especially California-based, that sounds ridiculous, but you know, I'm used to having a bill that was like $60. I mean, so it's a meaningful increase. And so that has me as a consumer, that has other consumers really thinking about, okay, as my energy costs are going up, how can I take better control of that? I do think more of a channel perspective would be the really rapid adoption of EVs. And even if, you know, we could argue about how that's plateauing, but it's still grown significantly. And what happens when you get your EV? You're so excited about all the energy you're going to be saving and that you're not going to be spending on gas. You come home, you plug it in, and then 30 days later, you get your first utility bill. And it's going to be pretty significantly different. So I think that's been a big driver for not only consumers, but I think on the commercial side as well. So you think about fleet management, for example, and if you are using EVs, there's some cost savings there, but that's really balanced or offset by some significant increases in energy as well. So I think those costs are really driving a lot of the decisioning around smart energy today.
Yeah, and when you actually get the tech there, of course, there also is the challenge of making sure that you get it connected and get it operating smoothly. And Ajit, I want to ask you, what challenges do device manufacturers face in creating connected home technologies that integrate with utilities or energy retailers?
Yeah. So we have to think from the device manufacturer's point of view as to what are the benefits that they get out of it, right, versus the ROI that they get out of it, right? So starting from there being multiple protocols in the market, right? So it becomes very difficult for them to decide which ones to go with. So Matter to a great extent is trying to solve that, at least in the consumer electronics segment, but Matter is still within the home, right? Now, for this demand response to work, right, they still have to integrate with the utilities, right? So it becomes a challenge. That comes the second challenge, right, which is there are multiple utility companies that they have to integrate their devices with. And each of these utility companies may have a different API, a different data flow. It becomes challenging for them as to how do they take care of integrating with all these different utility companies. The third is where companies like Ayla try to solve is about the data that they get out of these devices. How do they secure them? How do they meet the regulatory requirements, right, for both data in transit and data at rest? For many device manufacturers, that may not be their core segment, right? So they, it becomes a difficulty for them as to how do they manage all of this. And the fourth interesting point, I think, a challenge that we could call that device manufacturers face in this, with this setup is when the utility companies are trying to optimize the device's performance, right? Let's say the smart thermostat being asked to work a couple of degrees lower, right? In customer's mind, right, so a consumer's mind, that looks as if the device is probably not working, right? So they have to put in information right out for the consumers to know that, hey, the performance is being throttled at this point in time, but not that we are, it's not that, you know, the device is not working, right? So they always had these questions. So these are the questions that I get when the manufacturers come to us and say that, okay, when we want to participate in such programs, how do we make sure that, you know, our consumers, they don't perceive that, you know, the devices are not working, but rather it's being optimized for other requirements, right? So we try to, you know, work out and make put information on the devices, right, so that consumers get a view of it. And the final challenge I would think is, which I started with saying, you know, what's the ROI for them to spend all of this, and how do they get incentivized for building all of these into their devices, right? So there has to be a ROI for the device manufacturers that probably the utility companies have to think about how do they do it, but that is something that the device manufacturers probably are not very sure at this point in time.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, obviously with consumers, one of the challenges is when they have these technologies, if they adopted them for, say, energy savings, being able to connect them with programs that essentially help them save money is vital, but then you got to make sure that it's worth it to them, that they see it's worth it for curtailing their energy demand, and that they don't essentially opt out of the program. And that's definitely a challenge that a lot of energy companies face. Thinking more about the technology itself, Vera, I don't know if you could tell me a little bit more about what connected products behind the meter are leading the charge in managing energy at home.
Absolutely. I think smart thermostats continue to lead the energy management within the home, but we're really seeing connected devices with batteries attached really starting to come into play. I mentioned a little bit, induction stoves with batteries attached. Most recently, we work with a partner in the HVAC space that launched a product with HVAC with a battery attached. So we're seeing a lot of products that haven't naturally had energy capabilities integrate energy capabilities with batteries. I think there's also been a huge push for batteries, just given how versatile they are in being able to put power into the grid, whether it's exporting to the grid or curtailing within the home. And so I do think that specific segment right now is leading the charge, at least within the home.
Yeah. As a follow-up to that question, and also I'd like to toss this to Albert secondly, is that a lot of this really requires data. And one of the questions that we oftentimes field in the industry is, who controls that data? How's that data managed? Who owns that data? A lot of data privacy concerns. And I don't know if you could talk more about that, Vera, what you think about, who should own the data, and who should manage that data, where it should reside.
Absolutely. At LEAP, we take the stance that our partners, whoever that might be, the technology platform or the OEM or the smart thermostat, et cetera, they are the ones that own that data on behalf of their consumers. We have a product called Leap Connect, which essentially allows the end consumer to input their user account details and then gives us access to the meter data, but they do give us that right when they sign up for the program. However, most of that data continues to reside with our partners, with the exception of the data that we receive from utilities. But generally, I think we're also seeing a huge hurdle. So as many of these auto-enrollment programs like California DSGS or Massachusetts Clean Peak Standard come into play, we're seeing that a lot of our partners aren't prepared if they want to participate in those programs. So those are the programs that allow for auto-enrollment. They're the ones that provide you with 80-90% enrollment rates, and you can imagine the multiples of revenue you could be creating from that. Those programs do require address, they require name, in some cases they require email, and we're seeing that a lot of our partners on the smart home side aren't quite prepared for that. And so as we continue to move forward with energy participation and demand response, I do think that partners need to start thinking about balancing privacy with the ability to participate in programs that do require that data to prove that you do live in this area and that you do have the ability to curtail within PG&E, for say, and that you didn't just move to, let's say, Southern California with the same device. You can't be curtailing in the same way. So that's something that we've had to deal with at LEAP.
Yeah, and Albert, just kind of following up with that, the other thing that I was wondering too is how much does the utility want to control to manage that data and control that data, or is it more just about not really wanting to deal with the data, having somebody else manage that customer relationship?
Well, first and foremost, there is multiple proceedings in California that are looking at who owns the data and how much data each party needs in order for the different parties to manage the grid. Right, there is the independent system operator like California ISO, and then there are utilities, and then there are many community choice aggregators. And so all parties, and obviously the OEMs and the customers, and all parties require different set of different level and different granularity of data, and I think so finding the best and right level of data is important. I've been telling, like, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if I want to know, or the utility wants to know, how much the customer toaster electricity is using, right? But then maybe I do care how much energy that their batteries, their electric vehicles are using. And therefore, I think, I kind of want to go back to, your questions to Vera about, within the homes and buildings, when it comes to energy related, what is critical. And in my opinions, there are new technologies that couple with batteries, but on top of that, I think building management system and residential energy management systems is going to play a key role. And I'm hoping, this is my first time to CES, and I'm hoping that I'm start going to see more energy management system that can interoperable, that has great interoperabilities with many of the different devices using hopefully open standard. And why is that important is because as a utility, I just want to provide the signals, and that signal is getting more granular. We are trying to change the term demand response and energy efficiency to a term called load management umbrella. Everything is going to fall under load management. And how does PG&E define load management is, we provide a signals to the customer or their device to let them know how best to use their energies with the different device at a different time. And so the chances is this is getting more granular, like DR, which is 10, 20 hours in the past, per year, maybe we'll provide a 24/7 hourly signals on the day before to the customers or to their energy management system that connect all the devices, right, that control all the devices, and to let them know that, hey, tomorrow our predictions in these specific circuits, in these specific feeders, in these specific substations, we would like you to do this, okay? And hopefully they will respond. And right now, even internally, we have a lot of debate, and there's a lot of work, with many different entities and organizations to figure out, how should these signals be combined with transmission, distributions, and generation needs that meet all requirements. I mean, can you imagine, just because California or ISO price is low, that doesn't mean that I can ask all customers, oh, you know what, feel free to use electricity now because we have plenty of hydro. It's a month of February or March, and we have a lot of hydro and we have a lot of solar, and therefore the price is negative in the Colorado market. So go ahead and use electricity now. Go ahead and charge your EV. But you know what? That does, I may have a distribution constraint in that specific circuits that is creating, like, I don't want people to, charge their EV at the time. So all of these are very complex, and how do we combine all of these to one or multiple signals and get those signals into the different technology vendors? It's going to be very tricky, and therefore, having a building energy management system and a residential energy management system that can combine all of these informations, and the EMS would know if the customer only have a smart thermostat, or if the customer have an EV, and can the EV be only do managed charging, or can the EV actually export to the home, or can the EV actually export to the grid? I mean, all of this, the energy management system needs to keep track of it and be able to respond to our signals in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
Sorry for the long answer.
No, that's a great answer. Now, obviously, one of the things that a lot of utilities and smart home players are really thinking about is, how do we reach the next customer? Park Associates data shows that that smart home technology has reached the early majority, and that would be people that wait to see the technology is proven out before they adopt. But how do you reach the next group? How do you reach further into that early majority? And I wanted to throw that to you, Anne, and follow up with by Vera on that question.
Sure. So I think part of it, I put my marketing hat on here, it's really reframing the narrative for consumers. So if you think about something like demand response, for years we've been talking about it, and the message has been, you're going to save money, you're going to save money, you're going to save money. That just hasn't gotten us very far, right? So how else can we reframe that for the consumer? One thought would be, your home is really your personal energy management system, and is it performing optimally for you? You think about your car. You regularly do a tune-up for your car to make sure that it's running as effectively and efficiently for you as it can. Why would you not expect the same out of your home? The technology exists today, the data exists today to be able to ensure that your home is working as optimally as possible for you. So I think that's just one example of really reframing the message of how we talk to consumers about these types of technologies. I think that makes them less potentially scary as well, and helps people to get over this fear that I'm going to somehow lose control over the comfort level in my home or the comfort level in my business as well.
Yeah, I think the messaging to consumers does need to change, partially because demand response in decades that it's been available has kind of wrought some concern within a lot of different communities, whether it's small, medium-sized businesses and consumers. And so I think instead of saying that you need to be uncomfortable in order to be able to save, there's this idea of how can you, be grid resilient? How can you contribute to the broader grid, right? I think they experienced a blackout in San Francisco, PG&E territory, about like 13 or to 18 hours around the holidays, and that was a real issue. And I think those are the moments when you reach folks and you tell them that, it's not just about being uncomfortable, it's about making sure that the critical services that you rely on and the area that you live stays resilient and can continue to connect to the grid. So I think that's also something that we need to really focus on, is like, this isn't just about we pay you for you to be uncomfortable, but more about how can you really give back to the grid and be a part of the ecosystem within which you operate.
Yeah, and the messaging has always been a real challenge, particularly from the utility side, about being able to connect with consumers on that level. Well, we have just about a minute left, and just in that time, I think I'll just throw this to Albert and to Ajit just to wrap up here. What's the dark horse technologies or business models that could reshape the energy market by 2030? Just about 30 seconds for each of you.
Yeah, I would think it has to be AI, right? And specifically keeping consumers' interest in mind, right? So I would like to build upon the point that Anne mentioned. Unless consumers really feel that they are getting the most out of it, they may not be interested, although these programs have been there since a long time, but with not much of success, right? So, so what I hope is that with advancements in AI, we are able to build processes, better smart systems, right? So that take care of customers' interest in mind, comfort in mind, right? And without them even noticing, there are things happening in the background which is eventually leading to the optimization, but without pinching them at all, right? So being the profession that I'm in, and I know that consumers' interest is first in case we want to succeed in this aspect.
Great. All right. Well, yeah. Looks like we are actually at time, so I'll go ahead and conclude. Stick around for our next session, in multifamily, hosted by my colleague Kristen. And I believe we have a slide up there for a white paper with Schneider Electric that involves orchestrating the future of energy management. It's free to download. Check it out. And up next is our panel on smart living and multifamily spaces. Thank you.
Thank you.